talk about AI and art in the same context, but nowadays it's becoming more of a common thing. So my background is I am a computer scientist doing AI for the last 25 years, in particular doing computer vision, which is the field of AI that look at images and try to understand their content. So me and other AI scientists would be very happy if we look at images like that and we understand there is a man, there is a woman, there are fruits, there are cats, cars, horses. That's what we do, that's in AI. However, if you look at art, it's very different because we as humans, when you look at art, that's not what we're looking for. Definitely, that's obvious things that we recognize there are a man and a woman, but there are multiple levels of understanding related to our social life, historical context, and even how the art affect our emotions. So it's a very, very sophisticated thing when you look at art that definitely AI cannot do. Nowadays, most of the shelf AI, if you give it images like that, most probably it will tell you it's a stuffed animal. It's anything but other than understanding deeply what art is. So that led me about 7 years ago to establish the Art and AI Lab at Rutgers University, where we have been looking at problems related to understanding art and style and genres and influence in art and creativity and many things in this domain. I'm going to talk about a couple of things we have been doing. A few years ago, we developed a system that tried to understand the element of art, and that leads to something very interesting. For example, this system can look at lots of art, millions of artworks, and bring together things that nobody have looked at side by side. Like this pair of images here. One at the left is an artwork by the French artist Basile called the Artist Studio, and at the right is Norman Rockwell, the Barber Shop. About 70 years apart, different continent, different styles, different movements. But the machine brings them together as very similar. And we look at them carefully, and why is that? And if you look carefully, you can see there are 3 men in the left room, there are in the left image, there are 3 men in the right image. There's a big window here, big window there. There's a chair here, oven here. Even the stairs going up to the left of the frame is similar to the tilted frame in the right. So it's striking similarity between the composition and placement of object and subject, although different subject matter and different styles. So I'm not an art historian. I cannot tell you what that means. Is there an influence between Norman Rockwell and this art by Basile? But definitely no art historian have ever looked at these two things side by side. And this really, the interesting thing for me is that this is what the machine can do now. It can really look at art and understand it at a little bit sophisticated level. Another important result here is this figure here. Here, actually, we trained the machine using deep learning to understand styles. So basically, train it to classify between Renaissance and Baroque and Impressionist. And our interest, not really the classification, our interest was to look how the machine do that and how that related to the art historian methodology. And very interesting things appear out of that. One of them is that the machine find out that there are 2 factors that explain what happened in art history in the last 500 years in the Western civilization, Western art history. And this plot here show basically what happened in art history in the last 500 years. And more interestingly, the machine actually arranged art history in a chronological order by itself. We never give the machine anything about when art was made, a piece of art was made, anything about Renaissance happened before Baroque, or Impressionist happened in the 19th century or 20th century. We never give it anything about dates, but by itself, it arranged art history in such a way that you see here. If you go clockwise in this diagram, you can see Renaissance moving to Baroque, moving to Realism, moving to Impressionism in the top, and you see Cézanne coming after that, and then Modernism, abstract art, and all the way to pop art, closing the loop in these diagrams. Very interesting observation here. Many, many interesting things we can see how the machine understands art progression. So we are getting to the point where AI can really look at art and discover many interesting things. And here comes the question, can the machine create art? Can the machine become creative? So let me show this clip.
a machine. It's actually the first work of art made by AI to be sold at Sotheby's. Sorry, I'm late, Dana. I got caught.
All right, that was from the HBO Silicon Valley series last year. And that piece of art there actually is done by a machine using the AICAN algorithm that we developed that I'm going to talk about now. In the last few years, there have been a lot of interest in using AI to make art. And these are all artworks by different artists, including Tom White, Mario Klingman, Anna, and Robbie Barrett. So lots of interesting and amazing artwork have been developed by these artists and others. How artists use AI to make art? This is our version of AI generation, which is more autonomous and the machine generating art by itself. I'm going to explain how. How can we generate art using AI? Basically, imagine you train a machine, some AI, and give it lots of artwork. Can it generate something creative, or going to be only emulating what exists in art? This is the question, and that's really what happens. But let me step back and explain how art is made using AI nowadays. First, art has been made using AI since the dawn of AI 50 years ago. There's nothing new. There is a new wave of AI in making art started by what's called GAN, Generative Adversarial Network, which is a deep learning model that is able to synthesize images from random. So how this works, basically this network contains two components, two layers. One is called generator, which will just generate images from random, just random images. And the other is called the critic, which will have access to some data. For example, you give it images of cats. And now the generator have to guess and generate an image of a cat from random. Doesn't see any cat, just generate a random image. So imagine it generate a random image, give it to the critic, and the critic tell it, no, it's not a cat. Now, given that signal, it try to improve, and after many, many iterations, it will try to generate something that looks like cats. That's how GANs work. Imagine now you give these GANs artwork, art from art history. Will it generate anything that's artistic? Maybe. So at the top here, we show what a GAN, a typical GAN, will generate if we give it classical portraits. As you see, it generates a lot of distorted portraits. In some sense, it reminds us of the portraits in the bottom from Francis Bacon, which has this deformed nature. So, but there is a big difference here. So Francis Bacon intentionally make these portraits deformed to convey some message intentionally, while the machine created this deformed portrait basically because it failed to make correct portrait. So again, here is trying to make a portrait given what it sees, but fails. And from that comes the aesthetics of most AI art that we see right now. The AI art surprise us because of this deformation happens because of the machine failure. However, the machine here didn't intend to do that, and definitely is not constructively doing anything creative. It's just emulating and fails in the emulation. So before moving forward, I want to discuss basically who is the artist here. So definitely the artist in this process comes in pre-curation, what is the data set to give it to the algorithm, tweaking the algorithm, and post-curating the result to choose what to show to the world. So at the end, it's an artistic process that involves artists in making art, and definitely AI is a tool here. So let me move right away to how to make the machine creative a little bit. Moving from being generative to being creative. And here we developed basically a variant of GAN that's called Creative Adversarial Network. And the basic concept is basically based on the psychology of aesthetics. So imagine you are an artist living in late 19th century after Impressionism, and you have seen lots of Impressionist art already. It doesn't excite you anymore. Like this great art by Sicily after Impressionism, like came Cézanne and Van Gogh and other post-Impressionist artists that try to make something new. So that's because of habituation. You kind of see the same art again and again. You have to really do something new. So comes an artist like Picasso in 1907, come and shock the artist in his circle by his innovation. So artist always has to innovate to basically push against habituation. And this is basically what drives art forward. This is exactly what we have done here using our autonomous artist AICAN, where we give it all art history. And in one hand, it has to learn how to follow the aesthetics, but on the other hand, it has to really push and create something that doesn't fit any existing styles, something novel. And from that, it started generating all these amazing works that we have been showing in different exhibitions in the past. So let me actually make a little Turing test for you to see if you can tell the difference between art made by autonomous AI or art actually by artists. Raise your hand if you think this is done by an AI. All right, this is done by an artist. Raise your hand if you think it's AI. Doing good. That's our algorithm. AI. That's a human artist. AI. Human artist. AI. It is AI. AI. It is AI. AI. Yes. AI. Yes. No much hands are raised. So basically, you get the point that we can do actually autonomous art now that you cannot tell whether it's done by AI or not. So what's next? So let me skip through this. So where we are going now? How can AI change the way art is made? So basically, as I said, AI now is becoming a tool that can be used, and we are developing a tool now that's called Playform that any artist can use, where you can plug in their inspiration for the project and their aesthetics, and then push a button without any coding needed, and the machine starts to generate iterations of work based on their ideas, and from that they can choose what they want and iterate. Anyway, I have to stop here. Thank you very much, and I hope that was useful. Thank you.